Our favourite person to talk to in the world is none other than the wonderful Megyn Kelly, and there's so much to talk to her about. The Megyn Kelly Show on SiriusXM, YouTube or podcast. Rockstar, nice to talk to you. Kamala Harris has discovered that it's okay to do interviews. Now, most of them are incredibly soft. Some of them are kind of soft. But I want to ask, before we get into The View and 60 Minutes and Howard Stern and Colbert, why is she doing this now? I thought she was winning.
Clearly, there's been some bad news in the internal polling. And while today there was a New York Times Siena poll that showed her 3 points up in the national vote over Donald Trump, that's only anecdotal. What she needs to do is get up above him by some significant margin in the swing states, and it just isn't happening. And just as that New York Times Siena poll hits, another YouGov poll hit as well, saying that Trump is up. So what it tells me is that something told her in the internal polling it's not going well, and she needed a strategy shift. Otherwise, she would not be changing strategy with 30 days to go until the election. You only do that if you expect to lose. So she has seen something that we haven't seen that probably is rather dramatic, because they are taking a huge risk putting her out, and also her buddy Governor Pinocchio, who can't go 2 minutes without telling another lie. So we'll see whether it changes her numbers at all, but it's really late in the game to be making this big a shift.
Yeah, there's also, as you know, a couple of state polls that have popped up tonight, which is starting to show Trump in front in the places that are considered to be the absolute must beginning of the win, blue wall states of Michigan, Wisconsin and in Pennsylvania. Now, about the actual interviews, I heard what you had to say today, that the 60 Minutes conversation was the more polite of the conversations that 60 Minutes would normally have with a political candidate. But at the very least, there was some pushback. And even then, she fumbles the ball.
I mean, I give Bill Whitaker credit for at least trying on immigration, but net, he wound up the thinnest kid at fat camp. Like, it's not really a great accomplishment. That was it. That's really, he pressed her on the economy a little, and he pressed her legitimately on immigration. So good. And on every other exchange, he fell down on the job. I mean, he had questions like, you say, based on the following 3 or 4 things, that Trump is a racist. Go on. It was like, what? It was so obvious, right? And then in the 60 Minutes extra, which is the outtakes that didn't, and just some of them, not all of them, God forbid they show us the whole thing because she'd look like a drooling mess. They, of course, cleaned up her transcript.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We are not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
But in some of the outtakes that they posted, he does get into the coup, right? That Joe Biden went down and she was elevated and she took over this role. And I'm like, great. This is where he's going to ask her about the fact that this, A, has been utterly undemocratic, and B, resulted after she lied to us all for years about his mental acuity. What did she know? When did she know it? Why did she look us in the eye and tell us that he was absolutely fine, when we both have her on the record now and him on the record saying they made every decision together. They did every law together. She was an integral part of all of the big administration decisions. So she was with him. She was with him a lot. So she would have seen. No, it wasn't asked. He didn't touch on it. All he asked was, well, do you think that's why people feel like they don't know you? Because there wasn't a more robust process behind your elevation. Oh my, what a fail. And it was just time and time again where she started giving answers like she was at a deposition. Now, I'm a lawyer. She's a lawyer. And these answers, to me, at first sounded normal because I spent 10 years taking depositions and doing cross-examinations. And when someone says, I'm not going to answer a hypothetical, that's a totally normal, common answer in a deposition, where you're across from an adversary who hates you and is suing you or your client. This is not a deposition. It is an interview in which she is asking us, on whose behalf the questioner is there, to hire her for the most important job in the world. I won't answer a hypothetical is an absurd answer. Yeah. And you know where she invoked it? Every single time it was foreign policy, because she's a know-nothing. She didn't know what to say when he asked her about China, when he asked her about Ukraine. She danced and danced and danced. She didn't know what to say when he asked her about Israel. Like every major conflict, she seemed completely flat-footed and a little clueless, like she was waiting for someone in her special little ear pods to give her the answer. I realize this is an internet conspiracy theory, but it's kind of a fun one. And the answer didn't come, so she just went with, hypothetical. I'm not going to answer a hypothetical. Well, guess what? We're entitled to the answer. She didn't give it. We used to ask that question all the time in presidential debates. Totally fair game. She didn't answer because she can't.
But also, any promise you make in an election is hypothetical about your capacity to deliver it. And when she gets pushed on, well, how are you going to do it? Of course, she ends up going to water. By the way, if you want to know anyone that Megyn Kelly has ever done a deposition on, they're currently still in the fetal position and crying. In 50 states, there you can find them all. Now, on some of the softer stuff, right?
I'll tell you a quick story, Paul. I'll tell you a quick story when I was taking my depositions. And it would 9 times out of 10, it would be a man I was opposed from, on opposing counsel. And they would start to get aggravated, whatever I was doing, whether I was doing the questioning or whether I was doing the defending. And instead of getting progressively upset like I would when I was a very young attorney, when I got older, I learned to go the other way and to get calmer and to look at these guys and just say, you seem upset. Do you need a break? Do you need to step outside? Come back after you've collected yourself. It was so fun. It used to drive them insane. Oh, I miss that.
Oh, just turn into the ice cold steamroller. Fantastic. Now, on some of the softer interviews, now we know why all of this is there. It's for her to seem more likable than she actually is. It's not about an intelligence test. But she even then stuffs it up. On The View, she's asked by the most left-wing host, is there anything you would do different than Joe Biden's done in the past 4 years? Her answer, no.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
So now she doubles down and she owns every mistake and the very reason why people wanted to punt him by 10 points.
Her campaign slogan is, we can't go back. That's her whole campaign slogan. We can't go back. And the reason the New York Times reported today that it showed her making a little bit of headway on its poll, which a month ago had Trump up 1, but now has her up 3, so it's a 4-point swing in her favor, is because the voters are starting to see her as the change candidate.
Please. As
the one who will bring real change to the policies of the past few years. What does she do? She goes out and says, I'm exactly like Joe Biden. Everything he did, I was a part of, I blessed, I worked on. Yes, I see no difference between us other than his name is Joe Biden and mine isn't. I mean, that's really how she answered the question. You almost have to feel for her campaign staff, which is in the back room going like, oh my God, does anyone have any bourbon? And then, of course, they're like, it's in Kamala's purse. It's right over there.
But also, I'm noticing something, and I don't know if you're seeing this too. We are told that Joe Biden wants nothing but for her to win. But sometimes she's been live on TV and then he's popped up and done a press conference, or he's popped up and given a speech. Is he trying to Bigfoot her a little bit?
I couldn't love this anymore. Get the popcorn. I can't wait for more of these episodes. Clearly, there's a little sibling rivalry. There's trouble in paradise inside that White House. Can you blame him? He plucked her out of obscurity. She was a total failure when she ran for president. She didn't get any votes. She was so humiliated in the early primaries that she bailed early on in the process before a single state voted. So he plucked her out of obscurity and failure because she's a black woman. And he was very explicit about that being the reason why he chose her. He promised James Clyburn he'd pick a black woman if Clyburn would get him South Carolina, which got him the nomination. And what does she do? I mean, truly, like Psycho, like the movie Psycho, stuck the knife in. As soon as he showed, publicly what he was experiencing, and there was signs of utterly failing mental acuity about what she had known for a long time. She wasn't loyal. She had those other parties and those donors, the party donors lined up behind her in a New York minute. So she'd been working on it for weeks, which he's obviously aware of. So yeah, there's no love lost between the two of them. And now you've seen two in as many working days, times in which he got her back. She was out there at a Michigan campaign event on Friday saying, look at me, we must go forward. Can't go back. Come with me. And he comes out to the White House lectern and he's like, all the same. She was with me at every step. There's no daylight between. And all the cameras went to him. You know, the sitting president of the United States, for the first time appearing in the White House press briefing room in his entire presidency, all the nets take it. All the cameras are on him. They go off of her. No one gives two craps about her anymore. And that's the message they picked up, which is now the lead on all the nightly news shows. And then he doubles down today. She decides to pick a fight with Ron DeSantis because she thinks it makes her look good to fight with a prominent Republican, even though the man right now truly is trying to save lives. I don't remember the last time a Cat 5 hurricane was barreling toward the Gulf Coast of Florida. Those things are monsters. They're talking about storm surge like we've never seen that may have cities as large as Tampa, Florida, underwater. The mayor of Tampa, and there are some dozen towns around it, said today, if you stay, you will die. Wow. Ron DeSantis is the governor of that state. He has truly a lot to deal with. They're still recovering from Hurricane Helene, which devastated the same area 2 weeks ago. And she decides to get political with him and to pick a fight with him. Why? Because she's probably still ticked off about his abortion law and his ill-named, according to the Dems, don't say gay bill, which was not anything of the kind. So she thinks he's going to be fun to fight with without any appreciation for the distraction she's now causing for a man who truly has people's lives in his hands. I heard a guy who lives in Florida, well-known commentator here, Charlie Cook, talking about this recently, saying, really in Florida, he's a Florida resident, we elect somebody as governor just so they can get us through hurricanes. That's the main job, get us through hurricanes. Ron DeSantis is doing it. He's done a stellar job of it. She decides it'll be fun to needle him. It'll be fun to distract him. It'll be fun to get political on him because he didn't take my phone call. He ignored me. So when she gets a mic in front of her, oh, now she wants to talk to the press. Great, I'll talk to them. And she stops outside of her airplane and she says, oh, he's playing politics. He won't take a phone call from me. He won't talk to Joe Biden. Then what a terrible time to get political.
Well, first of all, I have called and talked with, in the course of this crisis, this most recent crisis, Democrat and Republican governors. Called, taken the call, answered the call, had a conversation. So obviously, this is not an issue that is about partisanship or politics for certain leaders, but maybe is for others.
Well, Ron DeSantis goes on Fox News with Sean Hannity on Monday night, and he let her have it, saying in 3.5 years, she's never once called me, not once, to help out with the hurricanes that we have every fall. That's hurricane season in the United States, not a once. And he said, I'm working fine with Joe Biden. He and I are getting along. We're working. She has nothing to do with this. She's never had any responsibility when it comes to a hurricane, and she doesn't today. And so now we're at issue, as we say in the law. We're at issue. We have one party saying he wouldn't take my call or that of President Biden, and we have the other party saying she's a nothing. She's never involved in this crap. I'm talking to the man who is in charge. And what happens today? Joe Biden comes out and says, I've been talking to Ron DeSantis all the time. We're working very well together.
The governor of Florida has been cooperative. He said he's gotten all that he needs. I talked to him again yesterday, and I said, no, you're doing a great job. It's all being done well. We thank you for it. And I literally gave my personal phone number to call.
In the drama, it's another back to her, only it pales in comparison to what she did. So she deserves it.
Done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
Molly, what do you make of that?
I'm surprised, frankly, that she doesn't have more to say about this, given that she and her campaign know that this is one of the main questions that voters have about her. And one of the main things she's been trying to establish as part of her candidacy is the idea that she would represent a break from the past 4 years, and to not be able to come up with something to say in that moment. She continues to not be particularly nimble on her feet in a lot of these interviews, and this is a very obvious question that gave her an opportunity, frankly, to differentiate herself in a way that would have made news, that would have answered, I think, the curiosity of a lot of voters who want to know how she would lead differently, and she's not very specific in laying that out, and she can't point to a decision she would have made differently, which, in an electorate that thinks that doesn't like the way this administration has led, and that doesn't like the track that the country is on, that may not be a very satisfactory answer.
Integral, integral, robust, robust, deposition, deposition, hypothetical, hypothetical, adversary, adversary, invoke, invoke, flat-footed, flat-footed, aggravated, aggravated, headway, headway, stellar, stellar, pale, pale.
If you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date with future videos. Thank you for watching.